right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Soulful Sunday. I am your host, Akim Arch, and in this episode, we're going to talk with Principal of Beulah All Age, Beulah Infant, now Beulah Infant, and Primary Mrs. Nadine Gayle-Little. She is here to share her story. But before Mrs. Little comes on, we have to interact with our viewers for just about some minutes and then we move on to the next segment of the show. So, our theme for today is being a leader. And so, I'm going to ask Matthew Wright to just turn on his microphone and let us have a little conversation before Mrs. Nadine Little comes on. Good
Mike,
afternoon to you, Matthew. Thank you for joining the show. How are you?
good afternoon. I'm doing well. Mic check 1, 2. I'm just making sure I'm sounding somewhat decent on here.
Awesome. So, Matthew, have you ever been in the position of being a leader, and which position was that?
Hmm. Well,
Mhm,
I would like to say yes,
mhm,
and that would be in within. Okay, I would like to say that it is in within the media team at my church, my local church, the Orange Seventh Day Adventist Church. Where since a lot of us, so us senior members, we will
mhm,
be heading off to school, like in a wee little bit, and we have a few trainees in the various departments. So you have like those who work in the audio and us in video room, and then for me, no specifically graphics. No, I'm like the senior graphics man,
oh,
basically.
okay. So
And
you're. Mhm,
I have a couple of trainees who are interested in pursuing graphics, graphic
mhm,
design, and all these things. So I basically would like to say that I am a leader in that, right? Because I have to guide and mold these young folks
mhm,
to assume the position when I am unavailable at
mhm,
that time. And their performance is going to be a reflection on me as a leader because I am the one that they look to for guidance. So,
mhm.
yes, yeah, that's the answer to my question. To your
Oh,
question, actually.
thank you, Matthew. So, serving in this capacity, how is the experience going for you?
Uh, this songwriter says prison is not a bed of roses, but I'm
Definitely.
gonna put a spin on it and say leadership is definitely not a bed of roses.
Uh-huh. Why did
It,
you say so?
because it takes a lot of patience.
Mhm,
It takes let's see, patience, knowledge, and like you need to have. I don't I don't know if I want to say authoritative, but you know you have to basically what is a synonym for a leader? Yeah, my mind is scrambled right now, but I would say that you would have to take on less agreeable, I would say,
mhm.
kind of personality, basically. Or so okay, I'm just gonna say authoritarian because you're kind of authority if you're a leader.
Mhm,
And I would just like to say that even with that, you still have to, in order to be respected as a leader, to
mhm,
make sure that whoever is answering to you is actually gonna conform to what you're saying. Well, whether you want to be a democratic or autocratic leader, I
yeah.
don't know what's wrong with my speech today, but
Mhm,
whether you want whatever type of leader you want to be,
mhm,
it definitely requires like extremely good communication skills. And I would say that nowadays that is something that a plethora of people lack, especially in leadership. A lot of people believe that just being blunt and mean and autocratic with everything
mhm.
is the way to go. And I would say that not really. I don't think people respond well to that, especially in nowadays culture.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely not a bed of roses because it takes a whole lot of soft skills, which is, for some can be a very difficult feat to achieve. So I guess that's why I would say that.
Okay, so you are serving, are leading in a media world, I would say. So, Matthew, what have you gained as an individual serving in this position?
Okay, well, the one thing, uh, the one thing that I know that I've definitely gained and improved on, well,
Mhm,
and it might sound a bit redundant, but my leadership skills have improved. Uh, yes, because I was always a person who you know, I'd rather be the guy that say, okay, whatever you say, and I just roll with it. But that's not how it's gonna be your entire life.
okay. So, do you feel that you have managed or you're managing this position well? And were you glad that you obtained this position and why?
Uh, I am actually feeling very proud of my trainees because I think see, some wrong in speech. I involuntarily
Mhm,
helped them to gain a sense of intuition. Where to say, okay, if Matthew doesn't send the poster or the title at
mhm,
this specific time, I guess it is my time to do something in case he is unable to. And that is something that really surprised me because I just guide them in what to do and the standard that the church media teams
mhm,
have in terms of our graphics, certain things to do. And when I see that, because there are some nights when I am making a poster or a thumbnail for the church and it takes a while to get the exact effects I want. And then I just randomly see one of the younger folk, they just send in a thumbnail and I say, here's my little piece. And I just look at and I say, wow, look at that. Here is somebody being effective because of what I taught them to do. And it gave them the sense of urgency and
mhm.
did I say intuition? It's not that word is an intuition, it's initiative. The word is initiative, right? They have
Right.
that initiative
Mhm,
to put something forward in case the boss doesn't come through at this specific time.
mhm.
And it has me feeling very confident that they are going to excel because
Okay.
of God
Mhm.
and also because I they had me as a leader. So yes.
Awesome. Awesome, Matthew. Thank you for joining the show. And I hope you continue to serve well in the graphic designing, position. It suits you well, Matthew.
Many thanks, my brother.
No problem. Thank you for joining the show again. All right, so Mitzi Morgan, good afternoon to you. And thank you for joining Soulful Sunday. How are you this afternoon?
Good afternoon. I'm quite well, thanks for asking.
Awesome. So, Mitzi, have you ever been in the position of being a leader? And which position was it?
I have in various a lot I've had a lot of experience, one
Mm-hmm,
of which is church. Let me just use that one. Being a leader is no easy task, I must say,
mm-hmm,
because there's a lot of criticism that comes with it. People think that, oh, once you do something, you have to do it that way.
mm-hmm,
There will always be criticism. However, during those times, being in that position, you have to know the difference between being a leader and a
mm-hmm,
manager, because most persons are actually managing something and not leading. Because if you lead, it's different from managing, but the process, it can be long and tiring. However, at
mm-hmm,
the end of the road, when you see that your fellow, I don't want to say like members are disciples, because we're more like a family, right?
mm-hmm,
Once I noticed that they're actually growing, and that to hear them saying that you're a role model, that does something to the heart, where it's like, oh my gosh. But yes, it's a very tiring, rewarding at times, but just just to know that there's a difference between leadership and a
mm-hmm.
manager, because people sometimes think it's the same thing. And that would be my one too and my experience.
Okay, so what have you gained as a person serving in this position?
To listen, to stop
Mhm,
and listen. Not you might go in there thinking that, as a leader I want this to be done, but there are other persons with much better, way better ideas than you. So
mhm,
just listen and know each the strengths and weakness of each person, because you don't want to put someone in, for example, graphics, and you know that Matthew, as you said, would be the best in that. You have to put them in their strong suit so that the work
mhm.
can be done much better and of good quality.
So, Mitzi, do you feel you're managing this position well, and were you glad that you obtained this position, and why?
I Well, feedback, it wasn't what I think, it was what others actually think, to be honest,
Hmm.
in my case. At first, I think that I was letting everyone down, but at the end, they showed me, and it's good to reflect. So, based on reflecting and hearing the feedback of other persons in it, yes, I'm no longer in that position leading. I'm leading something new, but that's still
Okay.
an undergoing project. But that one I can say stands out the best right there. So it's, yes, I've learned a lot, and that would be it for that question.
Awesome. That is it. Thank you for joining Soulful Sunday this afternoon, Mitzi, and thank you for participating.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, no problem. So we are moving on to the next segment of our show where we will be conversing with our guest, Mrs. Nadine Little, Principal of Beulah Infant and Primary. So good afternoon to you, Mrs. Little. How are you? Thank you for accepting.
Good afternoon, Orit, and I must thank you for the invitation. I am very well, and I look forward to chatting with you this afternoon.
Awesome, Miss Little. Mrs. Little, sorry. So, Miss Little, what was life like as a high school student and university student?
Um, those were some wonderful years.
Mhm,
Some of my best memories um, would be from as early back as high school,
mhm,
and looking back, I did not make the most of the opportunity at either high school or university. I must tell you that. I wish you know, what I know now, I wish
mhm,
I knew then, I wish I'd valued the time more, but I did enough to get me through.
mhm.
And I didn't do badly. I did well, fairly well. University, I would have graduated with honors, but at the same time, I knew that I did not work to the best of my ability, but I had fun,
Yeah.
great friends and so on. So I had fun. It was a wonderful experience.
Awesome. So, having gone through high school and university, what were some of the challenges you have faced and the achievements you have earned?
Uh, Adversities there were many. Dealing with various personalities from as early as primary school into high school. And it's interesting that while at the time you did not really understand what was happening and the benefits
Mhm,
that you would have accrued as a result of all of the challenges, but
mhm,
it's good looking back that those challenges happened in terms of the personalities, in terms of even teacher student relationship, in terms of even classes and courses, universities and things not going the way you expect, and lecturers not being what you, I mean, you're fresh out of high school and you have a lecturer who is of a certain mindset, and while you're not expecting to be spoon fed, at the same time you're expecting some of your lecturers to be more um mm, more up to the task as to what
mhm,
their job entails, because you were able to compare lecturer A with lecturer B, Lecturer A was firing, but at the same time, you could clearly see that another lecturer was underperforming, and then that would affect your performance. So there were challenges like those. There were challenges you would understand, especially with university and the latter part of high school. Group work is a lot of, you have to do a lot of group work,
Definitely,
you know,
definitely.
and your grade is dependent on everybody coming
Right.
together, right? And as we
Mhm.
look at being a leader, you know, this afternoon, those leadership skills started way back then, because it's either
Mhm.
you allow the tide to take you anywhere, or you know, take the initiative and decide,
Right.
okay, this is my education, this is my grade, let's get
Mhm.
this thing going, and you know, you step in and you get things going. So there were all of those issues to deal with, you know, and then the economic part of it, the economic realities of life, you know, because I'm from Clarendon and I would have migrated into Kingston. I went to UTech, cast at the time, College of Arts, Science and Technology, now
Mhm.
University of Technology, Jamaica.
Mhm.
And so I would have rented, you know, not boarded, not stayed on dorm. I would have rented a facility, a young, barely 18 years old, and I started renting on my own. Actually, rented a room um,
Mhm.
at a family home, out of a family home, and there were
Oh.
challenges there, a lot of challenges. But to God be the glory. I survived. We managed, and many
Mhm.
lessons were learned from experiences like those. As we talk about being a leader, from very
Mhm.
early, I knew who I was. I knew who I was.
Mhm.
I had an understanding of me, what I wanted, what I liked, what I will accept, what I won't accept.
Mhm.
And I had an understanding of where I wanted to go,
Mhm.
you know, and to some extent, in those early years, to some extent, how to get there. But just having that purpose and that firmness,
Mhm.
um, and like I said before, Dr. Codlin would have instilled in us that we
Mhm.
need to choose wisely, and to think before we make, you know, certain decisions, especially life changing decisions. So those were some things that were pivotal, you know, to
Mhm.
how we started our lives and how we evolved, you know, a little later on.
Right. So you said you learned them, you took them with you into your teaching world. How was this world for you, Mrs. Little?
um in the early years, I started teaching in 1993,
Mhm.
and September of 1993, and of course it is vastly different from now, you know, I can say, in terms of the, you know, the some of the things that we have to deal with, some of the challenges that we have to deal with. um the learners back then were more, they were easier to, they were easier to I'm going to use the word manage
Right.
cautiously. I'm going to
Mhm.
cautiously use the word manage. I don't like using the term manage, you know, and I'm going to explain why a little later on, because you don't manage people, right? But they were easier to deal with. I mean, there's so many challenges now, there's so many influences now, and the kind of parental control that existed back then does not exist now.
Mhm.
And because it doesn't exist the way it did back then, it interferes with how you are able to have more of the kind of control that you would want to have over the learners, because the parents will come in and will want to interfere too often, a little bit too often, on issues that, as an educator, and not just an educator, but as a loving, concerned adult, you know, you know exactly what you need to do, and how to do it, you know, and you really want parents and society on a whole to trust you as an educator, that you know what you're doing and that you're on the right path. Now, if it is that there is a situation and trust has been broken down, then that's a different issue. But if you're not presented with that, then allow us as educators to do our jobs. And so back then in those early years, it was easier. It was easier then. Students were more receptive to learning. Um, and they weren't, well, there's no the influx of technology. It was different in so many ways. You got them to learn, but the strategies were different, the resources were different, but yet still you were able to enable the children to access learning. um, Now they have far more resources than um, in the
Back then.
past, and
Right.
we're still not getting the quality and the amount of what you expect. You're still not seeing that. So it's different. The environment is different. The influences facing the students are different. And I mean, so many things, family issues,
Mhm.
the economic realities, all of these things impact the learner and affects the outcome. But
Mhm.
as educators, we continue to do the best that we can,
Right.
because we know we can, and we know that eventually we will get the result that we must get.
Indeed, indeed, Mrs. Little. So you served as teacher and then you matriculated into another position, that of being principal.
Oh, I
So
was
how
I was vice principal before.
vice
I Yes, I was vice principal for about
Mhm,
3 years, I think, 3 to 4 years at Four
mhm,
Parts Primary and Junior High.
mhm.
And then after that, I transitioned into the principalship.
Into right. So how what does this mean to you? And it is quite different from being a teacher because you have different roles and responsibilities now. So how is this going for you and what does this mean to you?
Um, the principalship,
Mhm,
it's a mammoth task. The duties, the responsibilities, but it's a privilege. And for those of us who do it because it's either a calling or we love it,
mhm,
we enjoy doing it. And I am one of those individuals.
mhm.
I hope the day never comes when I have lost my fire, my passion, my love for it, because then I absolutely will need to find something else to do. Um, because it's a privilege or it to do the job.
Mhm.
It makes it, I don't want to use the word easier, but it makes it a little less challenging for you
Mhm.
to get the job done, because you're doing what you love. you
Right.
know you are
Mhm.
doing what you love. You are doing what you believe you are called to do. You're called to serve, and
Right.
this job is about service, right? And the difference between being a teacher and being the chief teacher, um, is that as the teacher, you have your roles and your responsibilities nicely laid out.
Right.
The school has a vision, the school has a mission,
Mhm.
and those, they are shared. So as the teacher, it is expected that you're going to buy into this vision, you
Mhm.
know? And usually the vision, it starts off with the principal. That's when you interview for a job as a
Mhm.
principal. One of the things that you have to sell the board of management is, what is your vision for the school?
Mhm.
What do you plan to do with the school? How do you plan to take the school into the next 5 years, at least the next 3 to 5 years? And so you have to convince them that you have what it takes. And so once you have sold them on your vision of, say, a Beulah All Age School, then
Mhm.
in turn you have to sell that vision to all the stakeholders. It
Right.
then becomes a shared vision, you
Mhm.
know and that's what makes a difference between, well, one of the ways in which it's different. As a leader, you're that visionary person. You're
Mhm.
driving the vision. The mission is beautifully outlaid, and everybody, all the stakeholders, including the parents and the children, they have a role to play, you know?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's for you as the leader to manage and control that vision every step of the way. You need all members of the team on board. You need the
Mm-hmm.
teachers on board. And so,
That's right.
whilst you work with all of these individuals and you get their input, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because I heard one of the young ladies earlier would have spoken to something like this. Other members of the team, they have ideas too, you know, and so you want their input as well. But
Mm-hmm.
while all of this is coming together, the vision must remain intact,
Right.
you know, because that's the general pathway. But when you look at strategies and the methodologies and so on, those you can get other stakeholders to come in on board and to help you to drive it, you know. And so the leader, the principal,
Mm-hmm.
has to be very clear in what is it we are trying to achieve. Who are the persons that must be a part of this? What are the specific roles? What are the resources that the various persons will need? How do I help to provide the resources? What are the limitations, the weaknesses within the system, within among the staff, for example, or the groups, and how do I help them to overcome? How do I support? How do I train? So in saying all of this, and I can go on to say so much more about it, but I'm trying to answer this question about the teacher and the principal, the difference.
Right.
The
Mm-hmm.
teacher doesn't have to focus on all of these things. The teacher has to focus on the curriculum and
Mm-hmm.
specific tasks assigned and delegated and so on, you know, while the
Mm-hmm.
principal would have the overarching responsibility of every area of schooling. And not
Mm-hmm.
only that, community development, you know, and so on. And so there are a lot of things that the principal must consider managing the welfare of all members emotionally, physically,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, as much as you can, you know, and so on, and supporting these individuals. And so it is a huge task. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not one for the faint of hearted, it's not one for someone who is not committed, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and does not really understand the scope and the impact that they can have on the various stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. So, going through all this, Mrs. Little, and serving in this capacity, how did this build you? How did it help to build you as a person?
Every step of the way, every experience kind of prepare you for the other, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you either get tougher, stronger, smarter, wiser, because you're learning, you know. You're learning from the various challenges, you're learning from the adversities that you would have gone through year after year, and working together, and the kind of support that you get or the kind of support that you don't get, you expect to get. All of these shape who you are, you know. Do you lose hope, or do you dig deeper within yourself, you know, and try to build yourself more, extend your network? Because if you are not getting what you want here, you know, in terms of resources, in terms of support, in whatever shape or form, then you might need to network a little bit more, you know, reach out to some other persons, so that you can gain what you need in order for you to achieve those goals that you would have set for the institution, you know. And so what adversities do, you know, really they build you,
Mm-hmm.
they prepare you for greater. Is like, as a Christian, each challenge, each what is it now, each
Temptation.
temptation is not the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Each spiritual warfare that you go
Right.
through, it strengthens you, you know, after you would have gone through it with prayer and fasting and God's guidance, and it strengthens you for the next one that is to
Right.
come. And so that is what the adversities and the challenges that you will encounter as a leader will also do for you. You
Mm-hmm.
grow, you benefit, The
Mhm.
team will also grow. And because you're working together, you grow stronger. So it's not just the principal alone now,
Mhm.
because if you're big on teamwork, which you must be as a leader, because
Mhm.
it's not just about you. As a
Right.
matter of fact, the greater you are as a leader, is
Mhm.
the less you are seen and the more the team is positioned forward, you know?
Right.
And so the team now you gain more respect because the
Mhm.
teams, they get to see you in a different light. They
Mhm.
see that you're passionate. They see that you are really concerned. They see that you have their best interests at heart. They see that you really want this to happen. And there are instances when the team will do the work, maybe just for you,
Mhm.
Our principal wants this. She wants us to achieve this. Let's come together and let's do this for the principal, or let's do this for the school board, or this is what the ministry is asking us to do. And you would have set out an outline, all the reasons to justify, the request. And so persons just come on board and say, yes, it's a good thing. Let's get together and do it. And that's what some of these struggles that you go through as a team,
Mhm.
can do. So it's not me, myself, and I, it's us working
Right.
through all the issues.
Right. So growing all this strength, we or you, let me say we have
Mhm.
never thought for a second that there would be a pandemic, there would come such disease that will cause us to be shut up in our homes,
Yes.
inside, and all of the things that comes with it. This is it.
Mhm.
So during this ongoing pandemic, what are the ways in which you are successfully navigating issues as a principal of Beulah Infant and Primary?
I tell you, all right, when the pandemic started in March of 2020, and we were told that, we would have to, we'd have to, you know, do this online, you know, thing. I'm using the thing now because back then we really didn't fully understand the whole
Right.
concept and scope of online. Um, but quickly we had to learn.
Mhm.
Quickly we had to learn. We had to learn about the different technologies that are out there available to us, and
Mhm.
how to use the G Suite, for example. Um, but I didn't know how to use nowhere on what Google Meet.
Google Meet, right? Mhm.
Yes, I didn't know about all of that prior to pandemic, and scores, hundreds of other teachers island wide. And so
Mhm.
the pandemic, while it has brought so many negatives into our lives, it has also done so many positives too.
Right.
And for education, it has really stepped up the mark where education is concerned, because we are back face to face, but we're not going to set aside all the technologies and all of these wonderful things that we would have benefited from, because now we see how useful they are in the learning space. And so we will continue with that. But to go back to your question, in the pandemic, how did we manage?
Mhm.
um I can honestly tell you that I remember calling the team to a meeting, calling the staff to a meeting, and saying to them that this is our situation.
Mhm.
We have to go online with the students. We had to look at what we had, what we needed,
Mhm.
who was ready, who wasn't ready, who was skilled, you know, and who could begin to do some amount of training and teaching and assisting others, so that we
Mhm.
could begin, to help each other. So we started off with the WhatsApp group, because that was the easiest thing for everybody to start teaching
Right.
with. So we,
Mhm.
we made sure that every class there was a WhatsApp group, and then we
Mhm.
had to learn the rudiments now of the Google Classroom, you
Mhm.
know. And so, of course, we have to give thanks to the Ministry of Education too, to JTC, the Jamaica Teaching Council. And there were other groups that came on board, and they would have done a lot of teaching and training, for teachers island wide, to enable them to be equipped to navigate these different platforms. And so our teachers were able in short time to be able to introduce the children to all of these and to be interacting with them in the different space, so they could
Mm-hmm.
choose during the course of a day whether to be how much time to spend in a Google Meet session, um, to tell the children when to go to Google Classroom, what will be there to expect, and so on, and when to use the WhatsApp group and so on. And then there were some other educational tools that they were using as well in the online space. Now,
Mm-hmm.
all of this took time, and teachers struggled. Yes, teachers struggled because there will always be persons who gravitate and take onto it easily, like a fish to water. And then there would always be those who struggle, with the technology. But eventually, um,
Mm-hmm.
everybody got with the program. And what I like about my team is the synergy, the unity, the
Mm-hmm.
ability for one to see the weaknesses and to reach out and to help. I
Mm-hmm.
remember we had a teacher who, when she was trained by the Jamaica Teaching Council, she scored 100% on her test.
Look at that.
Yes, it was absolutely perfect. And she was
Mm-hmm.
called, yes, she was called to become a tutor, and
Mm-hmm.
so she was helping now to tutor teachers across the
Mm-hmm.
island. So we had that resource right within our reach right there, so we tapped into that,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a great asset to helping us. And there were other teachers who learned, as well, and so she, along with some others, were able to help the rest of us to navigate the online space. But I must tell you that one of the things that made us very successful during the pandemic, we
Mm-hmm.
sat and we decided, I mean, it can't be easy for the children to sit before a laptop or a tablet or a cell phone and just be
Right.
looking and listening, like you and I are doing right now.
Right.
And so we wanted to give them a richer learning experience,
Mm-hmm.
And so, I said to the teachers, what about recording some of your lessons and sending them to the students, whether by WhatsApp, whether by putting them into the Google Classroom, send them short, snippets of lessons, and then have the children respond by even sending you something by way of video.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a handful of persons who, yeah, like the idea, and they started. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were going strong with just a few persons, and eventually other persons saw the benefits,
Mm-hmm.
and they recognized what was happening. Students were more engaged,
Mm-hmm.
more interactive, they were enjoying it. The parents too were very, very involved, because you can't be in the online space and not have the parent be a part of what was happening, especially for the younger age children,
Right.
because they
Mm-hmm.
had to support them. And we had the infants online, because at the time we had the 3-year old, the
Mm-hmm.
4-year old, and the 5-year old in the infant department, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
those children, especially the 3 and 4-year olds, were greatly assisted by their parents, and we have to commend the parents for that, because they had to sacrifice time, whether they themselves were doing it or they assigned a relative or a family friend to give assistance. And some parents had to sacrifice their phones. Some weren't willing to sacrifice the phone or it because they needed it for business as well. But when
Right.
they came home in the evening, they would have allowed the children to do the work. And this is up to even the primary, the grade 6 age children. But what I love though about this aspect of it is the commitment with the parents. Though they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do it during the school hours, they were willing to come home, sit with them. But it also meant that my teachers had to be working longer hours, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, work just coming in. But what
Mm-hmm.
what they must be applauded for is that they understood the situation. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we were in a pandemic. They understood the challenges that various individuals were facing, and the teachers were just giving. They were just giving. They were just doing. You know, and so they must be commended for that. So we did a lot of online videos, a lot of interactive videos, and what this did is that it made the learning experience richer, more fun.
Mm-hmm.
You had more children coming online. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a good way of gauging teaching and learning because they're
Mm-hmm.
actually doing. They're actually
Right.
doing what you ask them to do. It's like conducting experiments and so on, you know? And so it was good for them. And we continued doing these things. We would have gone out into communities. We would have prepared learning kits, would have taken it to children in their homes or dropped them off at the nearest point. And then the parents too, many were faithful in either returning them to school or dropping
Mm-hmm.
them off at some corner shop where we could pick them up. And then the teachers would come in at times during the week to pick up those, you know, evaluate them and then give feedback. So a lot of things were happening during the pandemic, you know. Children were and I must commend my school because our children were gainfully occupied right throughout
The-
the pandemic. We kept them online and we kept them gainfully occupied.
mhm. I could see that on the Facebook page, like Beulah was popping on Facebook, Miss Little. So going through all of this, you know, the challenges and all of what COVID comes with, all of what the pandemic came with, did you ever felt like you would throw in the towel?
All right. I'm gonna say never.
Hmm.
I am going to say never. You know, as a leader, you cannot, you ought not to feel that way. And sometimes you might feel that way. Truth be
Hmm.
told, you'll feel that way because the human element will come in. But then don't even let that show. So for me, I never had that to contend with.
Hmm.
But I would hope that when persons do, if and when persons do, that they don't bring that across to those who are looking unto them for leadership. So it's not communicated, you know, because then they are looking to you for guidance, they're looking to you for strength and for support. So you can't
Hmm.
afford to not have the kind of energy to lift them and to build them and to empower them so they can move with you. Like I said before, I love what I do. I'm passionate about education. It's what I'm good at, and by this time in my educational career, I've done what 32 years in the system, and I know that this is my purpose. I am not dying to move on into any other field at the moment, um, or in the near future. This is me, and so I
Hmm.
love what I do, and because I love what I do, and Beulah's motto says, "Only the best is
Is
good
good
enough."
enough,
When
right?
I got to Beulah, one
Hmm.
of the first things I did, one of the first thing I did was to embrace that motto personally, to embrace the motto. And what we try to do every day is to get the children to own it, to embrace it, to believe it. So at the class level, when they're doing their work, whatever
Hmm.
your best is, if your best on a test result is 20%, okay, we will
Hmm.
accept it for now. But we're going to gradually work on it, and incrementally, we're going to step you up, you know? But it's all about helping persons to understand that you can do more, you can
Hmm.
give more, and
Hmm.
just keep trying. Just keep trying. And one of the things I try to do for myself as well as for the staff and the students is I
Hmm.
focus a lot on empowerment, empowering myself,
Hmm.
my mindset. I have to
Hmm.
feed my mind daily. You know, like you get up and you pray every day, and
Right.
you can't pray today for tomorrow.
No.
You can't do one big prayer for the week and say, oh, I'm going to be so busy this week. I'm going to pray for about 2 hours today because I have the time. No. So
No.
every day I feed my mind with some positive thought, and I share those thoughts as well. And it's the same thing I do with the children and with the staff. So when you have that kind of positive mindset, when the challenges and the adversities come, some of those same things you can rally back on, and they
Mhm.
help to strengthen you and to keep you focused, right? So no, I was never at a stage when I wanted to throw in the towel. And I hope
Right.
to God that I never get to that stage.
Because you love what you do, and when you love what you do, you do your best at what
Yes.
you do. Yes.
Yes.
So, Mrs. Little, we have seen that in recent times, school violence is becoming rampant in our society, mostly in the high schools, though it is
Mm-hmm.
becoming rampant between the teachers and students. How do you think this can change, and in what way would you advise both teachers and students?
Oh Lord, all right, it starts in the home, and I have to go back to the home.
Mm-hmm.
It starts in the home, and it starts from as early as in the toddler stage, you know? Um when they are in that early stage, infancy stage. We have an infant department, as I said before. And
Right.
discipline is something that is big, even at that level, because we
Mm-hmm.
have to teach the children to be disciplined. They must
Mm-hmm.
be taught by their parents and by all those who come in contact with them within the home, within their community, including the neighbors on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
whoever they interact with, and if they go to church and they should go to church, it
Mm-hmm.
must also come across clearly there. So everyone that would come in contact with the children that eventually get into our schools must have a kind of positive influence on them, and must be of the same mindset, the kind of mindset that says respect is paramount. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so many times the children do some things and they find it funny and it's laughed at, and they say, easy, or they think it's cute, but really it's a behavior that you really need to discourage, and you need to explain to the children why it is that this is not a behavior that I want you to continue exhibiting,
Right.
and so it starts in the home. At Beulah, September of last year, we started a values and attitudes campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Values and attitudes campaign. And it is because it came about as a result of our awareness of what was happening in schools around us and in society with crime and violence, disrespect, intolerance among children and adults and so on. And to say to ourselves, what can we begin to do? Because to tell you the truth, our situation at Beulah as it relates to indiscipline is not one that is concerning, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I commend our children all the time for that. They're a very disciplined group of students.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely do we have to deal with an incident of fighting, stealing, and things like that, minor issues as it relates to children, one hitting the other, maybe throwing a bag on the ground, and those kind of infractions. We mostly deal with accidents, children running and falling and colliding in each other with each other, and those are accidentals, but discipline wise, very, very good. And I must say that. But we are conscious that they'll be leaving us and they'll be going into high schools where they'll interact with different children from different backgrounds and temperaments and so on. And so we must prepare them. We are conscious that they go out into different communities, and they will also have to interact with other children when they are not with us. And so instilling these values and attitudes from as early as possible: punctuality,
Mm-hmm.
respect. I don't know, I will never ever be comfortable with a child calling a parent by first name. I'm sorry. I have a problem with it. I have a problem with it. You're either mommy or mommy or auntie this or so on. But the Paulette and the Michelle and the Michael and the Donald, no,
Mhm.
no, absolutely no. And too often we see these things happening, and then they think no that they can, I remember one day I was standing downstairs at school, in the quadrangle, and a
Mhm.
student was upstairs on the balcony, outside on the balcony. And I only heard a little voice, a cute, sweet little voice saying, "Hi, Nadine." No, this child just realized that my first name is Nadine. And
Mhm.
she's a sweet child, a very disciplined child, I must tell you.
Mhm.
When I looked up and I saw the little face, and then she gauged my response and she saw that I was like,
Mhm.
and she did, "Sorry, miss." you know?
Mhm.
And of course, I smiled at that point and I said, "No, not
Mhm.
Nadine for you, Mrs. Little for you." I've never
Mhm.
had another child calling me Nadine. But I'm not saying that this particular child calls his or her parent, by first name at
Right.
home. But if I had allowed that to continue, I would have more students calling me Nadine. You
Right.
get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So some of these behaviors as adults, we have to control, we have to monitor, we have to ensure that we have the values. We have to know the values, we have to practice them, because if we don't, then we can't transmit them. And that's where the problem is, tolerance. Many persons are not tolerant, and because they're not tolerant, when an offense is created against them, then the temper is raised, and reasoning and the emotional intelligence, that part of it is not there to help them to reason and to work through and to work out the challenges and the situations that present themselves. And so these are things that we must solve as adults among ourselves in the home. Too many of our children are exposed to the problems that the parents face, conflicts between parents and neighbors. And then
Mhm.
when the children come to school already, you can know what is happening in the community,
Right.
because the same problem is playing out in the classroom. And so it's a lot for the teachers to deal with, because
Mhm.
some quality time that should be spent with teaching and learning is spent dealing with issues that we really ought not to even be looking at. And you find you have to call in both parties to say, all right, we recognize that you two parents have an issue, and that and so on. But it really starts in the home. And if
Mhm.
we transmit the right values and attitudes to the children, and then as a school, we are also supporting, you know, and even if the home is not doing it and didn't start out doing it, as a school, for example, we have the program going on now. We
Mhm.
need the parents to be aware of what we're doing, so that when the children come home, they support and the education continues. And so we're hoping that the other siblings, it will be transmitted to them, because their
Mhm.
behavior, their lifestyle will impact the others within the home. So, as a school, we're taking responsibility, we're playing a role, but we want
Mhm.
to call on the churches to do more, and we want to call on the heads of the household, the fathers,
Mhm.
to step in. And if there's no father, then some father figure, you
Right.
know, more mentors for the children, to provide guidance. And then as a school, schools, we do everything. Once we see the need, we are going to do something. We're going to put into place some program, to help to deal with the different challenges that
Mhm.
exist within the system.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that, Mrs. Little. I must say, we are way over time past the. So we want to thank you for coming on this afternoon and for sharing with us your story of being principal and how you are an effective leader. Thank you, Mrs. Little. I must say, Beulah, in Beulah College at my time, no infant and primary, my alma
Yes,
mater. I
yes,
must
yes.
say. thank you all for giving me a foundation for stepping into high school and now into university and later on into adulthood. And I can see my grade 6 teacher on here, Mrs. Shireen Bowler. Good afternoon to you, ma'am. Thank
Hi,
you.
Akim. Hi, Mrs. Little.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Bowler.
How are you all?
I'm doing good. Thank you for
That's
joining.
great. You make me so proud, Akim. Thank
Thank
you.
We are definitely proud of you, Akeem. You went on to Clarendon College and you have
Yes.
really done yourself and your school proud. And now you have moved on to university. We will continue to follow you. You're great. There's greatness, within you already. It is showing. And I mean, we just can't. You're going to be coming back to us as one of our great alumni.
Yes,
So
indeed.
we're just giving you another what, 2-3 years,
Right.
giving a little bit more time, because I know that you're going to come back and you are going to be such an awesome role model, to our students and to the continuation of Beulah All Age School. Really proud of you. Thank you for having me on your program this afternoon. I hope that what I have shared will somehow be of great value to someone. Um, and I just want to end by saying that as individuals, if each of us should just endeavor to do the very best that we can at whatever we attempt to do, and also to find meaningful things to do, because we need to challenge ourselves more. We need to step out of our comfort zone and we need to stretch ourselves more, because we are beautifully, fearfully, and wonderfully made, and our potential is limitless.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us this afternoon. We're going to move on to our next segment. Producer, let me know if we have time. We can do a question and answer segment before Mrs. Little goes. Producer? Okay. Okay. She said we're fine. Let's move on to the next segment of the show, where we will have a question and answer segment for Mrs. Little. So if you are one of our viewers and you want to ask Mrs. Little a question, you can go ahead and do so at this moment.
Hello, good evening again, everyone. Are you hearing me?
Yes, Mitzi, we're hearing you,
Hi.
Mitzi Morgan.
Thank you. So it has been a pleasure listening to you. I am inspired seeing that, I've been in many leadership roles and the road will not end here. But seeing that you were principal, what would you say would be one of the best and worst quality of a leader?
Could you repeat the last part of it? One of the best or worst, or of being a leader?
Yes, that you have observed so far.
Um, it's going to be one and the same. For me, it's communication. Communication is key. I mean, there's so many traits that a leader must possess. Quite a number of them. But communication for me is key. Information must be well articulated in a timely manner, in a coherent manner to all the stakeholders, and persons must understand what you are about, what the vision is, what the mission is, what their role is. Persons must understand how to communicate to the various persons within, the team, with their colleagues and so on. Um, you have to set the tone for what communication must look like, sound like, feel like, and taste like. So if you get all of that right, you have the kind of synergy, You have respect, because out of that, you can get so many of the other wonderful traits that a leader must possess. Because with effective communication, you don't really have much of a problem where respect is concerned, you know, and so many of the other issues, you can cover them with good, effective communication. The opposite of that, when communication is poor, can you just imagine? You're not communicating well. Persons are not understanding, you know, you're not seeing eye to eye. They don't buy into your vision. They don't understand where you're going. They don't understand what their role is. You do not speak to them in a manner that they find to be very uplifting. Maybe they find it disrespectful, you know, that kind of thing. What does that do for the moral of the team? You know, our goals and objectives clearly articulated, and so on. And so the strength for me, communication. Weakness, communication.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mitzi. Anybody else with a question?
Yes, I do have a question.
Matthew. Go ahead, Matthew.
Pleasant.
Good afternoon, Matthew.
All right. So I was making reference to the situation where the physical altercation took place between a teacher and a student at a specific high school. And upon dealing with the situation, the principal fainted and found himself at the hospital. So I would say that as a principal of an institution, you will face an umpteenth number of roadblocks and obstacles, and overcoming them does take a major toll. So, how do you recharge for the next roadblock in the path of the Beulah primary? Well, is it primary and instant?
It legally it is still the name is all age, but we are operating as a primary and infant school. So
Ah,
so what needs to happen is that the school must be gazetted for the change to be effected. So we're waiting on that. Once that is done, we will officially be Beulah Primary and Infant School.
understood. So yes, like I was saying, how do you recharge after these roadblocks? After overcoming these roadblocks, take a toll on you. It could be physical, it could be mental, it could be all of the Al's. How do
Yes,
you
yes.
recharge?
It's a great question, Matthew, and I would have heard of the situation that you reference, and I would have also been aware of persons who would have actually made light of the principal's situation. Now, I don't know what would have caused that to have happened, you know, and there are several things that could have caused him to have fainted. Um, but so I'm not going to speak to that. The state of our health is something that we have to work on in answering your question. Because if we're not in good health and we're faced with the kind of trauma, for example, that Beulah would have been dealing with from in recent times with the murders of the two girls, you know, and I wouldn't just refer to it as the two girls, because the entire family, you know, all members of the family on both sides, they attended Beulah All Age School. The mother, the father, their siblings, and then the children, right? So it's an entire family that we are dealing with the tragedy with. And I mean, I remember when I got the news the morning, and we weren't sure what was happening because it was kind of iffy. We heard that a student might have died, but we weren't sure. And my teachers were crying and persons were in distress. And I said to someone, it's just up the road, let's go up there and find out exactly what happened, you know? And I called the other team members together, my senior teachers, and I said, we're going up the road to check. hold the team together, hold the students together, keep them in until we get back. And when I got up there and I got the confirmation, I can tell you that my initial response was physical. And I'm going to use this to speak to possibly something that might have happened with the principal. I don't know. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that my body physically responded to the situation in that my stomach felt all weak. And you know, when you're going down a hill and you're going down a hill real fast in a vehicle and your stomach kind of dip, you know, that sinking feeling, that's the kind of weakness I had in my stomach. My knees, my limbs, they felt weak, like they wanted to give way, you know. That was a physical response to the trauma, because not just was I hearing that they were killed, but I was also getting some amount of details as to how. And so that just came at you a certain way. But then, Matthew, I remember instantly, in that instant, I remember that I left the school in a state and I had to gather information and I needed to go back to the team and hold the team together and help every member to process their grief. Did I have time to deal with my own? No. Luckily for us, a psychiatrist from the University of the West Indies, and I thank her again as I say this, Dr. Jardine Spaldings O'Hara, was invited to speak to our team, I think maybe about 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to the incident. And it was because of the number of principals and teachers that were dying, you know, and the traumatic effect it was having on all of us. So she was invited to come into our space and just meet with us as a staff and had some sessions and had a session with us. And it was very practical. And some of the things that she said to us were things that came back to me immediately that I put into practice. So I had to push all of what I was feeling in the back, push it aside. And then all of the leadership training and skills and everything, I had to bring that to the fore, march myself into the vehicle, drive to school, confirm what was happening. By then they had gotten even more confirmation, and just kind of hold everybody together. And so your health is important. Your mental health is something that as individuals we have to take seriously. Because if your mental health is not strong enough a certain state, then when you receive this traumatic news, it will have the kind of devastating impact on you. And also you must be equipped with some of these skills. What do you do when news like this hit you? How do you begin to process? I could not process and do anything during the course of that day. When I got home, that was when, as a matter of fact, from the moment I got into my vehicle and started the drive home, I'm alone by myself. Now is the time when everything is going to come back to me in a way that I can't push it aside anymore. I will have to learn, I will have to try to deal with it. And this is where your spiritual life, the kind of connection that you are supposed to have with God, would have come into play. Now, during the course of the day, you know, it was my strength that was carrying me. I was calling on my maker. I was calling on my friend to strengthen me, to give me the right words to say to my staff and to the students, you know. And I was calling on him to keep me. So when I got home now, I had the time to cry if I wanted to. I had the time to question him and say, why God? I had the time to pray, you know, all of that. And persons deal with grief in different ways. So maybe for some persons, they might need to, some persons, when you're under a lot of stress, you might need physical activity. Maybe exercise or going for a walk might be good. Maybe going out in the garden, if they have time to do something like that, might be good. Maybe watching or listening to music or something like that might be beneficial for them. It is what works for you, what you know would work for you. And so we must kind of have a kind of understanding of what we need to do should in case, you know, we have an encounter and or call upon a friend. Who do you have to call upon? You must have a friend that in the middle of something like this, you call upon to say, Matthew, today this happened, and you just pour out to Matthew, and hopefully Matthew can pour into you and strengthen you, you know, because tomorrow morning you need to get rest. You need to get rest. Tomorrow morning you need now to go back out and continue the process of helping, of strengthening, and continuing the job that you must continue to do.
Amen. That thank you very much, Mrs. Little. That definitely answered my question.
You're welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew, for that question. And thank you for responding and answering Mrs. Little. I must tell you, the death of Rafaela and Sharalee,
Charlie,
it's right.
yes, and Shane, yeah.
It's something. And I knew they were promising students of
Yes,
Beulah or
yes,
They were,
yes,
I can attest to that for sure because
yes.
they are my cousins. So I know for sure that they are
Really?
from they
Okay.
are
My condolence to you, Akeem. I didn't know that.
thank
Yes.
you. So
Wonderful girls. Wonderful girls.
wonderful. The next doctor, lawyer, journalist,
Yes.
whatever it may be,
Yes.
they were
Yes.
promising students.
Mhm.
But that's that. It happened. So we just have to try to accept it and move on. So that is where we end for today with Mrs. Little. Thank you again for coming on, Mrs. Little, and for sharing your story. We will now move on to the affirmation.
My pleasure, Matthew. All the not Matthew and Mitzi and all the other guests that joined. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Oret.
You're welcome, Mrs. Little. All right, so it is said that we all are born leaders, but it takes confidence, dignity, and kindness to be the leader we truly are. However, we find that sometimes to be a good and effective leader, we must be able to lead others in a positive way, with ourselves being the very first example. And when it is that we are in the position of being a leader, it is not a flaunting designation, but a responsibility we need to fulfill with the best of our ability. Being a leader is hard. It takes much to get up every day knowing that you are the individual that is leading others towards light. And sometimes we become so weary and dreary, and we feel as though we are not doing good enough as a leader. Hence, the reason why we feel like to throw in the towel. But as those thoughts come, we are reminded by the people that we lead the reason why we are leaders. It doesn't matter in what capacity we are faced with the same up times, likewise down times. Today we spoke with a leader, Mrs. Nadine Gayle-Little, who in spite of the ongoing pandemic found a way to lead her team successfully. That goes to show that no matter what the circumstances are, and no matter the trials we are faced with, if we are leaders, we will lead without a doubt. Today on this episode of Soulful, I am affirming that I am a leader and I will lead with all my might. That is it for today, folks. Again, we want to thank our guest, Ms. Nadine Little, for sharing her story with us, our viewers, our sponsors, Purple Archaeological Spa, Gold Line Pharmacy, and SMH Hardy Production. Thank you for making Soulful Sunday this week. My technical team, thank you for your continued hard work and dedication to this production. We're here next week, same time and same place, as we listen to another story to help us convalesce in the right direction. Until next week, I am your host, Akeem Art. Continue to stay safe and